जय श्री राधे। सभी वैष्णवन को हार्दिक सप्रेम सादर जय श्री कृष्ण। Shri Vallabhadisha ki jai. Today is day 60 of our daily 84 Vaishnav, 84 Vaishnav disciples of Sri Vallabhacharya ji. In English, it's Varta, number 49, the story of Ramanand Pandit, a Saraswat Brahmin from Thaneshwar. Part 1. In the eternal Leela, in the forest residence of the beloveds, he is an owl. One time, 6 hours after nightfall, the owl cried out. Sri Thakurji thought it was the morning and got up. Lalitaji told him it was not yet morning. Sri Swaminiji was somewhat annoyed and asked of what use was such a bird in the Kunj that had disturbed them at the wrong time. Let him be born into the material world, she said. That owl took numerous births in the realm of birth and death and was then born into this Saraswat Brahmin family in Thaneshwar. He was married in Thaneshwar, and when he was 30, his parents died. He lived alone with his wife. The two of them enjoyed reading the Purana and the Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing them. Therefore, everyone called them Pandit, learned. They debated with many people. One day, Sri Acharyaji came to Thaneshwar, and Ramanand went there for a debate. However, when he stood up before Sri Acharyaji, his voice seized up. Whatever he wanted to say came out wrongly. Sri Acharyaji asked him why he was speaking like this when he had come to debate. Ramananda felt very ashamed, went home and began to worship Saraswati, also chanting her name. He took a vow not to eat or drink until she blessed him. He stayed like that for 3 days. Saraswati felt pleased with him and asked him, I am pleased with you. Ask me whatever it is you want. Ramanand Pandit asked for the boon to be never defeated in debate. Saraswati granted him this reward. Very proud of himself, he again approached the Acharyaji to debate with him. Again, he was unable to express himself and just talked nonsense. Sri Acharyaji said, You have pleased Saraswati and you come here for a debate, so why are you talking in this silly way? Ramananda was extremely ashamed. He went home and again tried to worship Saraswati ji. She became pleased and asked what he wanted from her this time. I have already given you knowledge. Ramananda argued, What kind of knowledge did you give me? When I tried to speak with Sri Acharyaji, I could only stutter. Saraswati ji said, I gave you the boon to be able to defeat all scholars, not the Lord himself. Sri Acharyaji is Sri Krishna himself, and you went to debate with him. How did you expect to be successful? If you want to truly be blessed, then go to Sri Acharyaji, take shelter in him, and pull yourself out of this material world. You will never ever be able to defeat him. Ramananda then approached Sri Acharyaji and prostrated to him, saying, O Maharaj, I did not recognize your true identity. You are the Lord himself. I am a pathetic embodied soul. Please bless me and accept me into your fold. Please forgive me. I was acting like a foolish soul by trying to debate with you. Sri Acharyaji answered, But you are a Pandit. What will you gain by becoming my disciple? Ramananda pleaded, Please do not neglect me now. I surrender to you. Please accept me. Sri Acharyaji told him to bathe and then return. Ramananda bathed in the Saraswati river and came back. Sri Acharyaji initiated him with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandha, thus accepting him fully into the path of grace. Ramanand then invited Sri Acharyaji to grace his home and there to also initiate his wife. Sri Acharyaji said that he was just getting ready to leave for his holy grace pilgrimage, and so Ramananda should quickly bring his wife there. He did just this, and Sri Acharyaji initiated her with the Lord's name. Ramananda requested Sri Acharyaji to give him some seva, and Sri Acharyaji instructed him to offer everything to his copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because any other seva would be difficult for him. Ramananda and his wife bowed to Sri Acharyaji and then went home. Sri Acharyaji went off on his tour. Part 1. After this, one day, Sri Acharyaji came to Thaneshwar and stayed the night at Ramanand Das's home. He stayed the night but cooked at another Vaishnav's house. Part 1 continued. Towards the end of that night, Ramananda called his wife and told her to quickly go and gather all the cow dung she could find and bring it home before any other Vaishnava could get their hands on it and take it away. Sri Acharyaji heard him say this. He got up very angry that Ramananda had no respect for Vaishnavas, accusing them of stealing his cow dung. Vaishnavas are most dear to me, and he has talked about them like this. In his righteous anger, he took some water in the palm of his hand. recited some Vedic mantras and sprinkled the water over Ramananda. I am abandoning you now, he said. He stood up straight away and, accompanied by the Vaishnavas who were there, left that place. There is a village 6 miles from Taneshwar called Amitirtha. He went there to bathe and performed his evening prayers. Many Vaishnavas invited him to their houses at that time when he left Ramananda's house, but he refused to even drink water in that town. He left and refused to stay there at all. Bhav Prakash. If one offends Shri Acharyaji, then he might mete out a little punishment and then forgive. However, an offence caused to a Vaishnava cannot be quickly resolved, and so he left that place. When Sri Thakurji gave Sri Acharyaji the command to initiate souls with the Brahma Sambandha process in Gokul, at that time Sri Thakurji promised never to leave anyone who was thus connected to him through Sri Acharyaji. In order to test this promise, Sri Acharyaji used this excuse of an offence and abandoned Ramananda. This way seemed to be a good idea. Sri Acharyaji was angry because Ramananda had told his wife to quickly gather up all the cow dung before any other Vaishnav could get their hands on it. He used the word Vaishnava, and this was offensive and caused his anger. If he had named a name, then the offence would have been centred on them alone. But here he put all Vaishnavas into the one basket. That offence was spread to all Vaishnavas and to the Vraja Bhaktas. This is what angered Sri Acharyaji. In the Navaratna Treatise, Sri Acharyaji has written, Nivedanam tu smartavyam sarvata tadrisher janaihi. You should remember your dedication in the company of other accomplished devotees. When you remember your dedication in the company of other Vaishnavas, then you understand the reward of such surrender and its esoteric meaning. It was therefore very wrong for Ramananda to speak out about other Vaishnavas in this way, just because of some cow dung. In the widely sung kirtan it is stated, follow the way of the accomplished Vaishnavas and offer them your body, heart and wealth. Again, Pada in Rag Kedaro, I surrender to these Vaishnavas, followers of Sri Vallabhacharyaji. I lay my body on the ground before them so that their feet might touch my head. When I look at them with love and respect, I can see Sri Krishna standing in their midst. They are my very life breath, my wealth, for they have given up everything to Sri Vallabh. Sri Gosaiji also appeared as the best Brahmin to defeat the impersonalists. The poet Sri Hari Raiji, appreciating the fine mood of devotion, says that he places his hope in them and follows the very dust of the feet of these Vallabhiya Vaishnavas. This is the correct emotion to have for Vaishnavas, but Ramananda had inferred that they were thieves. By becoming angry, Sri Acharyaji warned all Vaishnavas to be careful in what they say and to be very respectful of Vaishnavas always. Part 2. After that, Sri Acharyaji again set off on his Holy Grace pilgrimage. Ramananda became crazy because Sri Acharyaji had abandoned him. He ate here and there, even in the market, and forgot all his rules of living. However, he never forgot to offer whatever he ate by saying, O Sri Govardhandar, please accept this offering. He did offer everything before eating. One day, he was wandering about in the market when he saw a sweet maker who was cooking some jalebi, special sweets for festivals. Seeing how fresh they were, he bought some and offered them in the usual way to Sri Krishna, the upholder of the Sri Giriraj mountain. Then he ate some. At that very time when he was making the offering, Sri Acharyaji was in Natadwara. Srinathji was having his midday meal. After the time for the meal was complete, Sri Acharyaji entered the temple to take away the offerings plate. He offered the Lord water to wash his mouth and hands, and a cloth with which to dry them. He noticed that there was a piece of jalebi near his mouth, and so asked him, It is not a festival today, so why have you got jalebi on your face? Srinathji replied that one of his disciples had offered it to him, and so he had partaken. Sri Acharyaji asked him just who that Vaishnava was, and the Lord told him that it was Ramanand Pandit in Taneshwar. Sri Acharyaji said that he had abandoned Ramananda, so how come the Lord was accepting Ramanandas's offerings? Srinathji told him, I made a promise that I will never ever leave anyone who has taken the Brahma Sambandha initiation with you. You might abandon him, but you cannot You have already offered him to me, so how can I possibly abandon him? Sri Acharyaji had to keep quiet. He facilitated Srinathji's afternoon rest and stepped outside of the temple. Sri Acharyaji recounted to Damodar Das Harasani that Srinathji had accepted Ramananda Pandit's offerings and said that he would never abandon him. Damodar Das inquired, "O Maharaj, you have abandoned him, but Srinathji has not. So now, when will you re-accept that soul?" Sri Acharyaji replied that if he were never to offend another Vaishnava in 100,000 births, then he would accept him again. So what if Srinathji accepted his jalebis? One Vaishnava who heard this went back to Taneshwar after having the sight of Srinathji. Ramananda asked him if Sri Acharyaji had remembered him somehow. The Vaishnava recounted the whole story of how Srinathji had eaten his jalebi offering and how Damodar Das had asked Sri Acharyaji whether he would ever accept Ramananda Pandit again, and that Sri Acharyaji had stated that he would do so after 100,000 births. Ramananda was so happy to hear that he would be accepted after that amount of time. He regained his proper pure consciousness and was very careful not to ever again offend against any Vaishnava. He knew that he had been very proud about his learning and now became humble. After this, Ramananda passed through 100,000 births in a dream, and Sri Acharyaji, gracing him again, accepted him back into his fold. Ramananda was thus a great and accomplished Vaishnava and a recipient of Sri Acharyaji's grace. Bhav Prakash, the inner meaning. Sri Acharyaji thus accepted him again because he punishes his disciples only for the sake of life instruction. It is not his own rejection. Just like parents punish their children to teach them, they will never do harm to their children on a whim. If Sri Acharyaji had fully renounced Ramananda from the bottom of his heart, then Sri Thakurji would not have accepted the jalebis. When a soul becomes a disciple of Sri Acharyaji, then Srinathji does to him whatever Sri Acharyaji requires. If Sri Acharyaji is very displeased, then Srinathji will also not accept them. Here Srinathji accepted the offering of Ramananda even though Sri Acharyaji had renounced him. So why is this? Sri Acharyaji had not renounced him from the bottom of his soul. In fact, he had pronounced the Vedic mantras over him. In other words, he renounced him in a lawful fashion. This was to show others who would think, "Oh look, Sri Acharyaji has renounced him." In reality, this soul was a divine soul, part of the Leela, and therefore an integral part of Sri Acharyaji's very being. He could not renounce any of his own limbs, and so he could neither renounce the divine soul. That is why Srinathji accepted the jalebis. And this is why Sri Acharyaji wrote in his Antakarana Prabodha treatise, An Appeal to My Heart, if a low-caste Chandal woman becomes a queen and is honoured by her king, and then at some point he is displeased with her, she is still better off than when she was a Chandal. If a Chandal lady becomes the queen, then she remains so whether she is respected or disrespected. Also in his Navaratna treatise he has stated, when those who have dedicated themselves with or without proper understanding should have no concerns, then what to speak of those who have established Sri Krishna as their very life force. Once a soul, knowingly or unknowingly, has surrendered to the Lord, they become very dear to him. What kind of grief can they ever have? In order to display this very point, Sri Acharyaji renounced Ramananda in a ritualistic way. In the same way that in the Ras Panchadhyayi, the 5 chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam describing the pastimes of the gopis, when the gopis became proud and Sri Thakurji disappears, he does not entirely leave them. He simply goes inside into their very hearts. In this same way, Sri Acharyaji seemed to renounce Ramananda in front of everybody in order to warn against offending Vaishnavas and to teach them to be very careful of what they say. Surrender and mistaken surrender can also depend on the way a word is spoken. When that respectable lady became very happy with the ordinary man who revived her and thanked him for doing so, that is when Sri Thakurji got up and left. Sri Acharyaji requested some ghee from Vraja Kshetrani, but she would not give him any. It was not until that night when she made her offerings to him and he turned his back on her that she had to explain the whole of her reasoning to him. With just one egotistical word, the whole of their dharma was destroyed. With just one pleasing word, the Lord may become happy. Therefore, it is essential for a Vaishnava to think before they speak. Those who know the principles of the path have their firm faith further boosted by this. Ramananda had been accepted into the path of grace, and for this very reason Sri Thakurji did not abandon him, and so ate the jalebis that he offered. He did not leave this surrendered soul. Thus he kept his promise. He told Sri Acharyaji to bring the divine souls to him through the Brahma Sambandha process, and stated that he would never leave anyone who came to him through Sri Acharyaji's auspices. It is in this Varta of Ramananda that the maintenance of this principle is revealed. Here Sri Govardhanaji himself shows this to the Vaishnavas. Ramananda was maddened and wandered through the bazaar. There he offered the jalabis and he accepted them, knowing Ramananda to be a soul who had come to him via Sri Acharyaji and was therefore to be honoured. Whosoever offers anything with pure love, that the Lord accepts lovingly. Even though Ramananda was crazed and not following the rules of the path of grace at that time, he still remembered to offer whatever he ate to the Lord. He had not fallen so low as to forget this. If any Vaishnava eats unoffered food, then they are the ones who have fallen and they are the ones who will be abandoned. A Vaishnava should never eat anything not properly offered. Sri Acharyaji left that place where he had rejected Ramananda. Sri Acharyaji had not rejected Ramananda from his heart and soul, and if Ramananda had come to him, he probably would have been pleased. Then all of these teachings would not have been revealed. Sri Acharyaji was in Sri Natadwara when Ramananda offered the jalabis. This showed that although all the Vaishnavas thought Ramananda had been fully rejected, in reality he had not. Ramananda was sitting close to Srinathji. Only his worldly and scripturally related bodies had been renounced. His non-material spiritual body was next to Sri Govardhanaji and he was serving him. All of these esoteric meanings are revealed in this story. Thus concludes Varta 49, the story of Ramananda Pandit, a Saraswat Brahmin from Taneshwar, although truly there can be no end to his story. Shiva Labhadisha ki jai, Sab Vaishnavan ko jai Shri Krishna, Shri Govardhanaji ki jai. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.